Tonight, dramatic new developments at the critical G7 summit in Alberta. The first signs of a concrete timeline to end the Canada-U.S. trade war.
I'm sure we can work something out.
And what's prompting Donald Trump's early exit.
You probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can.
The shocking new target in Tehran and the urgent warnings to evacuate.
This was a fake on so many levels.
The crafty tactic car thieves are using to get stolen vehicles to market. Plus, Pierre Poilievre's new leadership test. And planting a powerful seed through song.
We want our day in the sun, our time to shine.
The student chorus of courage, pushing global leaders while inspiring the next generation.
Stop focusing on their greed and start hearing the stuff that we need.
CTV National News with Omar Sajadina, reporting tonight from Banff, Alberta.
Good evening. The first full day of the G7 summit here in Alberta is ending with a series of dizzying developments. All eyes were on U.S. President Trump as he met with Prime Minister Carney this morning, and today a first, a possible timeline for a deal between the two countries. Then this evening, word that Trump is leaving the summit early, back to Washington, as the war between Israel and Iran intensifies. CTV senior political correspondent Michael Couture starts us off in Kananaskis.
President Donald Trump's positivity was on full display, basking in the Kananaskis sunshine. It was also on his lapel, where he sported a Canada-U.S. pin while meeting Prime Minister Mark Carney.
Our primary focus will be trade and trade with Canada, and I'm sure we can work something out. Yeah.
Hours later, the Canadian side said the two men agreed on a timeline to end the trade dispute. In a statement, Mark Carney's office said the two leaders agreed to pursue negotiations toward a deal within the coming 30 days. But the leaders seemingly proposing different ways of getting there.
I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good.
The meeting lasted more than an hour, and the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade said talks are accelerating.
That's why we reconvened after the meeting with the president and the prime minister, and we agreed to reconvene before the end of this week again.
Trump also used this summit to sign a proclamation implementing the U.S.-UK trade deal, which had already been negotiated, reassuring reporters this would protect Brits from future tariffs.
The UK is very well protected. You know why? Because I like them, that's why.
That type of unity is exactly what Carney called for as he kicked off this summit in the heart of the Rockies, even as the escalation of violence in the Middle East casts a shadow over these talks.
We're gathering at one of those turning points in history. I think we all recognize that turning point where the world looks to this table for leadership.
But that table will be missing its biggest player. According to the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump is leaving the G7 early, quote, because of what is going on in the Middle East. Now, Canadian officials tell us the summit will continue as planned tomorrow. Omar.
All right, Mike, thank you. Let's bring in CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos now. And Vassy, let's start with that timeline, that 30-day timeline that Mike just talked about. How realistic is that given all of the variables that we're seeing right now? I mean, the fact that Trump is leaving early is proof of that. And who was asking for this time frame in the first place?
Yeah, there's so much uncertainty, not the least of which, as you point out, is Donald Trump himself. In this case, my understanding is, at least from speaking to people who are involved on the inside of these negotiations, as much as I can, that they do believe it's realistic. They would not have attached or agreed to or suggested, as I'll get to in a second, this timeline if they didn't think they could at least announce the framework of a trade pact between the two countries. Now, the bigger question is why? Why 30 days? And my understanding, again, there is that it's an ask of Canada. It's mainly aimed at a domestic audience. There's a lot of pressure on the feds right now to levy counter tariffs in response to the doubling of steel and aluminum tariffs from the White House. This allows them to say, if we don't have a deal at the end of those 30 days, we can do that.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Canada. You are also learning more about a new leadership test for Pierre Poilievre. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so he will face a leadership review at the party's convention. It'll be a full convention that they're going to hold in Calgary toward, my understanding, is the end of January. It's normal. It's part of the Constitution that the leader, if they lose an election, has to face a leadership review. But in this case, they wanted it done as soon as possible. My understanding here is that, speaking to a number of Conservatives, they were pushing the Poilievre camp for this to happen as soon as possible. They got January. It's going to happen in Calgary, as I mentioned. They hope to get it done and put away so they can move forward, at least they're telling me, with the direction of the party.
All right, Vashi, thank you so much for this tonight. I appreciate it. Well, in case you're wondering what the price tag will be of this high-profile meeting, this summit in the mountains, if the past holds any hints, it could be north of $500 million. In 2018, Canada hosted the G7 in Charlevoix, Quebec. The bill for that summit ranked up to an estimated $600 million, and this week's gathering could top that. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has touched down in Calgary and will join world leaders in Kananaskis. His invitation causing controversy and sparking protests after the RCMP linked his government to the murder of a Canadian Sikh activist over 2 years ago. Multiple G7 protests here in Banff and Calgary again today away from the summit site. CTV's Kathy Lee on what the demonstrators want the leaders to hear as Kananaskis itself remains off limits to the public.
A pristine paradise that stuns tourists to Banff every time.
It's gorgeous.
The breathtaking vistas, a reminder of what's at stake.
Environmentally, that's what I'm kind of focused on.
Environment and climate issues, a sticking point for this group of protesters in a designated demonstration zone, pushing G7 leaders in Kananaskis to address. Their number small compared to the hundreds in Calgary the day before.
The engagement has been wonderful.
One of the unique things about this designated demonstration zone in Banff is that it's far away from Calgary and not as accessible to many people, but that hasn't stopped groups from coming here. These cyclists behind me came from Canmore, which is the next town over. It takes about 1 to 2 hours to bike.
This cyclist says her mission to save the bears.
We want our legacy to be having grizzly bears in the Bow Valley like another 100 years from now.
This group highlighting human rights violations in their country.
We are persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party.
G7. These people taking their message to the heart of Banff. Some propping up one leader of state, the president of Ukraine.
Just to show that there are some Ukrainians who are standing beside him.
Others critical of another.
Just all the stuff going on in the States right now, and having Trump be allowed into Canada kind of bothers me.
And in Calgary, members of this group supporting a proposed independent Sikh state in India.
Under his government, there's a serious threat.
And although this group also small, those here and here, adamant on standing their ground. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Banff.
And south of the border, another high-stakes meeting was taking place. Canadian premiers and U.S. state governors came together as allies in the fight against Trump's trade war. CTV's Sarah Plowman explains.
Outside the Massachusetts State House, the maple leaf flies next to the stars and stripes. Inside, Northeast U.S. governors and Eastern Canadian premiers formed a team against tariffs with a message for the top.
We have to get a deal.
Massachusetts governor called the meeting to talk trade, energy, and tourism as the Northeast U.S. sees fewer Canadians visit.
Our tourism numbers, for example, are down anywhere between 20% and 60% in all of our states.
States like Maine are trying to draw Canadians back. For that governor, it's not just about the economy, but relationships.
And Canadians do not deserve the expressions of disrespect that they're receiving.
As these U.S. leaders make the point to Canadians they're open for business, Ontario's premier shared his own message in American media.
We love the U.S. I love the U.S. Canadians love Americans. There's one person that is causing this issue, and that's President Trump.
While Ford says governors have a big say, Premier Houston says there are things this group can't address.
Like there's just certain things that are outside of our control. You know, we can't control what people tweet in the middle of the night. But there are things that are within our control, and that's where we should work together.
When asked whether premiers would encourage Canadians to travel to the U.S., they were still quick to promote travel within Canada.
I can't tell Canadians to come visit the U.S. right now. I'm going to tell them to go and see my neighbors in Nova Scotia. I'm going to tell them to spend some time at home.
And expect this meeting to lead to another. Premier Doug Ford has already said he plans to invite the governors to Ontario to talk about energy, minerals, an invitation he plans to extend to all U.S. governors. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Boston.
Donald Trump also urging Tehran, a city with almost 10 million people, more than 3 times Toronto's population, to immediately evacuate. Here's CTV's Adrian Gobriel.
The piercing pitch of air raid sirens warn of Iranian missiles approaching the Israeli port city of Haifa, where earlier today an airstrike evaded Israel's missile defense system, hitting a residential building.
Our little neighborhood, peaceful and quiet, so devastated.
The distressing scenes of war captured on live TV today. The anchor of the state-run Islamic Republic of Iran news network was live when she was sent running as debris falls and smoke fills the set. The images provided by Iran's state broadcaster show the aftermath. The Israeli Defense Force confirming the attack, claiming the building was being used by the Iranian armed forces under the guise of civilian activity. Canadians are also caught in the crosshairs on both sides of the expanding, deadly conflict.
The people in Iran are looking for a peace.
President Donald Trump tonight calling on residents to evacuate from Tehran. But Canadian Keobad Eshmalpour says his siblings and mother are trapped in the Iranian capital because of a shortage of fuel at gas stations, gridlock on the highways, and an airspace that has been closed to commercial flights.
80 million people, 85 million people cannot get out of the country. So be realistic.
Canadian Arthur Wilczynski has spent multiple sleepless nights in this parking garage that's now doubling as a bomb shelter in Tel Aviv.
Our hotel, a few windows were blown out. And when you're in the basement, especially last night, we heard a very loud explosion and people kind of yelled and ran away.
Israel says that 24 people have been killed and more than 500 injured by Iran's missiles and drones. In Iran, the health authority there says at least 225 people have died since the fighting began late last week.
Tonight, the United States Defense Secretary confirming the deployment of, quote, additional capabilities to the region, with reports that the USS Nimitz, an aircraft carrier, is now sailing towards the Middle East. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. A 57-year-old man has been charged with the murder of a Minnesota politician and her husband and the attempted murder of another lawmaker as chilling details emerge about the shooting over the weekend.
Belter saw the officers get out of the car. He drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it.
Minutes later, Vance Bolter allegedly killed State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and fled the scene. On the same night, authorities say he also shot and injured another state lawmaker and his wife and went to the homes of 2 other elected officials, armed and posing as a police officer with the intention of killing them. The suspect also had names of more than 45 elected officials in notes found in his car.
Threats escalated into a variety of different offenses, including drive-by shootings, arsons, a variety of acts of violence that spread fear and insecurity.
18 people have been arrested in the Greater Toronto area on extortion charges and other violent crimes related to the tow truck industry. Peel Regional Police are calling it a violent criminal organization led by 2 ringleaders who are also accused of extorting South Asian businesses and staging accidents for insurance fraud purposes. Coming up, the surprising number of stolen vehicles.
It's just insane.
Hiding in plain sight, plus revealing a new cost-effective way to experience Canada. Well, imagine buying a car from a dealership only to find out that it's stolen. It's happening with some unsuspecting buyers who are eventually left without a car and on the hook for payments. W5's John Woodward digs into the tactics thieves are using and how widespread it's become.
Cars stolen off driveways across the country.
There's a huge problem.
More than $1 billion a year, some of them sold overseas.
There you go.
But others end up on Canadian roads disguised and resold.
Money that's going to organized criminals and car thieves. Correct.
Some of that money spent on bribes to government agencies.
Are you a car thief, sir?
This was a fake on so many levels.
This 2019 Porsche Cayenne was the dream vehicle for a family member of Frank Rizko when they bought it in 2023.
They bought it from a dealership, by the way, so that assumingly it's safer and more legit.
But only a few months later, parked at this mall north of Toronto, the car disappeared. One of almost 60,000 stolen that year as a wave of auto thefts continues to sweep through Canada. Frank's family member made an insurance claim with TD Insurance, but that's where things got strange.
A few weeks go by, no answer. That drags into a couple months, and then finally TD rejects the claim altogether.
In a letter, TD Insurance told them it had found a problem with the vehicle identification number, or VIN, a number that is supposed to uniquely identify the car, saying, "Our investigation has concluded that the VIN is fictitious and registered to another vehicle. Therefore, there will be no coverage for this loss."
What did that mean, fictitious VIN?
Exactly what I thought when I heard that.
You can usually find the VIN here, behind the windshield on the driver's side. It's supposed to be one number, one car. And if it's not, there could be a problem. Those numbers are tracked closely by Carfax and its president, Sean Vorden.
Yeah, so Carfax is a Canadian company.
He says they have seen a huge increase in what is known as revinning.
A revin is taking the 17-digit character of a vehicle identification number and applying that to, in most cases, a stolen vehicle.
So this is about disguising vehicles that are stolen as legitimate cars.
That's right.
Vorden says his company's data shows there are some 140,000 possibly disguised stolen cars on the road right now. We asked Vorden to take a look at the Carfax report for Rizko's car.
Something doesn't add up about the history of this vehicle.
Vorden points out its records show the car's color changed from gray to white, and its mileage actually dropped from around 60,000 to just under 30,000.
They would have to drive backwards across the country a number of times to make that make sense.
Yeah, that's right. If there's ever a vehicle that looks like it's a fraudulent VIN or a clone VIN, this one meets the mark.
The truth is, this report refers to two cars sharing the same VIN, one in Ontario, the other in Alberta. We tracked the Alberta car to this Porsche dealership in Calgary. They believe their car is legit. That suggests it was Rizko's car that was the stolen one. Rizko's family couldn't have known all that. At the time of purchase, their Carfax appeared clean.
How does all this make you feel?
Irritated, disappointed. It's going to be 100,000 plus roughly around 40,000 in interest.
Yeah.
My family members have to pay this for the next 6 years. And they're thinking of getting a second mortgage to pay for this. Like, it's just insane.
His family owes all this money for a stolen car that was stolen again. And our investigation showed his car wasn't the only one tied to one Toronto dealership.
And coming up tomorrow, John will have more on the salespeople arrested. Still ahead, the move to make traveling within Canada more affordable. The federal government has launched a new promotional program making destinations at home more attractive to Canadians this summer.
This pass is about discovering and reconnecting with nature, history, and culture of this remarkable country we all share.
The Canada Strong Pass allows free admission to museums, national parks, and marine conservation areas run by Parks Canada. Via Rail tickets will also be free for anyone under 18 and discounted for young adults. Camping will also be cheaper. You don't need to apply for anything. The discounts will be just available from June 20th to September the 2nd. Team Canada announced the names of the first 6 players on the men's Olympic hockey team for next year's games in Italy. No surprise, superstar Connor McDavid is on the list and will be making his Olympic debut. 2-time gold medalist Sidney Crosby will also be on the roster, along with 4 others from Canada's Four Nations team: Sam Reinhart, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, and Braden Point. This will be the first time in 12 years NHL players will be competing in the Olympics. And still ahead. Small voices rise together to make a big impact. In a sometimes turbulent and fractured world, younger generations can often serve as a kind of compass, showing us the path for a better future. As world leaders debate the biggest issues of our day here in Alberta, a group of students has also found a unique way of adding their voices to the conversation.
We want our day in the sun, our time to shine.
In a world where the grown-ups make the most important decisions, the students at Banff Elementary School are not letting their ages get in the way of being heard.
You think adults make the world complicated sometimes?
Yes.
What would you tell them?
To stop focusing on their greed and start hearing the stuff that we need.
They come from families that represent 52 different countries. And going to school surrounded by such spectacular natural beauty gives them a unique focus on the challenges impacting them not only locally.
We want a cleaner air, we want less climate change, and we want less forest fires.
But also globally.
I think bigger countries should kind of donate to smaller countries or send food and money to help them out.
We are dreamers.
So when a community outreach team from the G7 summit got in touch with the school to get them involved, the school knew it would be a great fit. They came up with the idea of writing a song and brought on Banff's poet laureate, Heather Jean Jordan, who talked with them about the big themes.
I had taken all the words that came again and again and put them on a board. And so then all the students came up with rhymes and lines that could be in the song.
Together, they brainstormed lyrics, composed the music, and turned it into this. A song called A Single Seed. The seed for the idea itself was planted a few weeks before Easter, and staff and students knew they had to work quickly, straight to work as soon as the kids got back.
We came back from break on the Monday. It started on the Monday. They had it written by the Wednesday. They learned it on the Thursday. We practiced it on the Friday. We recorded it on the Monday.
The song and this recording, what they are now calling their anthem to the world.
I think our students have this opportunity to see in real life the kinds of impact that some of these decisions that are being made at the global level, how they impact locally here in Banff.
Their reminder to the leaders of the richest countries that what they do or don't do is a benefit or a burden their generation will ultimately carry.
Great job. Okay, take a bow, everyone.
Great job.
Very nice. Beautiful job.
And a very special thank you to the students and staff at Banff Elementary School for the conversation and the music this morning. That's a snapshot of this Monday from Banff. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.